It is April 1943, and a group of elite American fighter pilots has embarked on one of World War II's most audacious and high-risk missions. Zooming in just 50 feet above the ocean's surface, armed with intercepted intelligence and fueled by a thirst for revenge, these pilots are about to strike at the very heart of Japan's military leadership in a mission that at the time was the farthest fighter intercept ever recorded. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet of the Imperial Japanese Navy, intended to press ahead with his morale-boosting visits to forward units in the South Pacific in April 1943. After a series of setbacks, the 60-year-old mastermind of the December 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor realized his forces needed a psychological boost. The Americans had solidified their position on Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands by the spring of 1943, having thwarted several Japanese attempts to retake the island during the six-month period from August 1942 to February 1943. Rabaul in the Bismarck Archipelago was taken over by the Japanese in January 1942 and developed into a significant air and naval base. Yamamoto relocated his headquarters to Rabaul, New Britain on April 3, 1943. Yamamoto continued with his plans to visit forward deployed units at Balale, Buin, and Shortland Islands, despite grave warnings from subordinates of potential enemy ambushes. An encrypted message sent from Rabaul to 5 forward bases was intercepted by several American listening posts on April 14, 1943. What they discovered was an encrypted communication sent to the commanders of frontline naval detachments by Yamamoto's staff officer in charge of his daily schedule. The cryptographers discovered that Yamamoto was due to conduct a comprehensive inspection tour of several forward bases over the course of a day. The message contained a wealth of information, including a detailed itinerary of Yamamoto's whereabouts for the day, exact departure and arrival times, and the kind of aircraft Yamamoto would be traveling in to reach the forward bases. This was how the Americans came to learn when, where, and how Yamamoto would be arriving at the advanced bases on that fateful day. "We've hit the jackpot," the Pacific Fleet intelligence officer announced as he personally handed to Admiral Nimitz the sensitive information. Nimitz debated at length the pros and cons of acting on the information extracted from the intercepted message. On the one hand, killing Yamamoto would tip off the Japanese that their codes had been broken. Furthermore, it would eliminate a moderate voice from the Japanese high command because, based on information gained from his time at Harvard University from 1919 to 1921, Yamamoto had begged his superiors not to start an unwinnable war with the United States. He might serve as an intermediary who could help bring the war to an earlier end. However, Yamamoto's elimination would undermine Japanese morale and rob the Japanese military of its most talented commander. However, the primary driving force was exemplified by the name the United States gave the subsequent operation. As a result of his brilliant tactical success in organizing and carrying out the audacious attack on Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto became an overnight national hero. The ease with which Yamamoto wrecked the battleships of the Pacific Fleet shocked America and humiliated the U.S. Navy. The lack of any formal warning as required by the Hague Convention and the perception that the attack had been unprovoked led to the call for revenge. Nimitz decided that it was in the United States' best interest to eliminate the illustrious Japanese Admiral, and so Operation Vengeance was born. The target area was roughly 450 miles away from Guadalcanal. The only aircraft in the area that could launch a strike that far out of Guadalcanal was the Army's P-38 Lightning. To increase their range for the mission, they would need to be fitted with drop tanks. The task of developing an effective attack plan fell to the 339th Fighter Squadron. Out of the 18 fighters that took part, 4 would be the kill team that would pursue the transport, while the other 14 would deal with the escorting Zeros. They faced a number of difficult challenges, the most difficult of which was having to skim the ocean's surface in order to evade enemy radar detection. Since they could not use landmarkers to guide them in and confirm their position due to the low flying altitude, the American fighter pilots would have to rely solely on instruments. The pilots knew full well that the mission's objective was the elimination of Admiral Yamamoto. They were instructed to concentrate on downing the Mitsubishi G4M bomber used to transport Yamamoto, rather than engaging the Japanese fighter escorts in a prolonged battle. As with any mission, things went awry. 2 aircraft had to pull out due to mechanical problems, which reduced the covering force to a dozen planes. The P-38s were all flying about 50 feet above the water as they swooped into Empress Augusta Bay a minute ahead of schedule. They had traveled 494 miles, which at the time was the furthest fighter intercept ever recorded. They had begun their climb to 10,000 feet when they spotted their prey shortly after 9:45 a.m. The Americans expected a single Japanese Mitsubishi G4M and a large formation of escort fighters, but instead found 2 bombers and a mere 6 Japanese Mitsubishi A6M Zeros. The G4M were unwieldy aircraft to fly, and their pilots had no chance of outmaneuvering the American fighters. Their only defense in that respect came from their heavy armament, which included 4 machine guns positioned in the waist and 20-millimeter cannons installed in the top and tail turrets. However, because they carried large amounts of aviation fuel in non-self-sealing tanks, they were known to become a torch once hit. The 4 P-38s in the kill group approached from beneath the Japanese, taking the enemy pilots by surprise. One of the P-38s got into a position to attack the rear bomber, which was going hell for leather in a shallow dive towards the jungle treetops. He slid over to get directly behind the bomber firing as he closed to within 100 feet. As the bullets ripped into the bomber, pieces of the rudder separated from the plane as flames and black smoke started pouring from the right engine. It slowed down rapidly as it descended to the jungle floor. The P-38 roared past as it was pursued by 3 Zeros. The second Mitsubishi G4M fled to the open sea, but the Americans caught up and shot it down as well. After being hit by a Zero, 1 P-38 was unable to make it back to Guadalcanal. After sustaining damage, one of the Japanese Zeros was forced to make an emergency landing on a nearby island. It took until the next day for the Japanese to arrive at the scene of Yamamoto's crash site. He was reportedly thrown from the aircraft while still strapped to his seat, clutching his sword and sporting his service ribbons across his chest. A post-mortem examination of Yamamoto's body by a Japanese Navy doctor revealed that he died instantly after being hit by 2 .50 caliber rounds prior to the plane crash. The Admiral's remains were recovered and sent to Japan aboard the battleship Musashi. Admiral Yamamoto's state funeral in Tokyo on June 5, 1943, featured one of Japan's last great wartime parades. 1 million people lined the streets as the hero's ashes were laid to rest at Tokyo's Tamabuchi Cemetery. Yamamoto's successor declared, "There was only one Yamamoto, and no one can replace him." The death of Admiral Yamamoto was a significant psychological blow to the Japanese war effort, stripping them of their most talented leader. Winston Churchill was upset by the operation and protested to Roosevelt, believing that killing any one admiral was not worth risking Allied code-breaking capabilities. His animosity towards Yamamoto was not as strong because he had not been affected by the Pearl Harbor attack to the same degree. Operation Vengeance revealed the incredible lengths to which the United States would go to satisfy their thirst for retribution.
If you liked this video, there are many similar high-quality videos on my channel.